Hi, I'm Graham Richardson-Locke from FESPA, and I'm pleased to be hosting today's Sustainability Spotlight video. So today we're going to look at the fact that, we know that sustainability matters. It's driving change to reduce our negative environmental and societal impact has become an essential component to add to the business mix. We aim through these sessions to provide informative and actionable advice to help you to build your sustainability best practice. In today's session, which is concerned with certification with a focus on the textile and clothing sector, I'm very pleased to be joined by John Murphy from Hohenstein, and we're going to look at OEKO TEX. So John, I think for a kickoff, maybe you can just introduce yourself, tell us a bit about you and a bit about OEKO TEX so we can get into it.
Thank you very much, Graham, for a great introduction, and it's super to be here. First of all, introduction to myself. My name is John Murphy. I started work a long time ago, back in '79, as a trainee technician with Ciba-Geigy dyes and chemicals. I'm working through a variety of technical, commercial and marketing roles. I eventually became head of sales UK. As a trade, moved all the way to Asia from UK and Europe. I became the head of Europe technically, and working very closely, obviously, with the sales teams, the R&D teams, bringing real life developments to customers, taking them to customers' developments, and sustainability came along in a big fashion back in 2011 with the Greenpeace detox campaign. At that point, I became the main point of contact, working with Greenpeace, brands, retailers, which eventually formed a body called Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, and the chemical companies, putting together the very first MRSL on behalf of ZDHC, working very closely with the chemical companies. And more recently, I joined Hohenstein as the technical director for Europe with business responsibility for the Ecopassport. Hohenstein is one of the 17 institutes, and we're the largest institute and the founding member of OEKO TEX, which is a governing body. OEKO TEX actually does all the theory and the practice behind the certifications, and the 17 institutes work globally very closely with our customers, whether it be brands, retailers, processors, dyers, finishers, printers, other chemical companies, in order to certify them, creating reassurance across the whole supply chain.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I think that's a very comprehensive roundup of a significant career in the space. So today our discussion is going to focus around the OEKO TEX Standard 100 and Ecopassport certification schemes. Standard 100, as I understand it, is the product labeling certification scheme. So class 1 being the most stringent, which focuses around clothing for babies, so the most kind of sensitive users of clothing products. And then we kind of run through a range of classes that you may wish to give us a bit more insight onto until you reach class 4, which is concerned with furnishings and interior decor. And then Ecopassport, John, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is Ecopassport is a scheme whereby you can certificate your chemical inputs or process chemicals for manufacturing, so that the manufacturers then have the reassurance to know that there are products that they can just select from that menu of products as being pre-certified. I hope that's
that's a good summary, Graham. Thank you.
All right, cool. So our question is, which are the most relevant certifications for printed apparel and fashion, and what's the certification process? So that's what we're going to uncover in our chat today. So I'm going to ask you, John, if you can please outline for us which parts of the supply chain are relevant to the OEKO TEX standards that we're talking about today.
Thank you, Graham. I can show a couple of slides in a minute, but we actually certify the whole supply chain from the dyes, chemicals, print paste and auxiliaries coming in, all the way through to the final garment, including the processing. I will try and share my screen in order to outline it clearer.
There you go, spot on.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
And John, thanks for putting this deck together. I know that some of the workflows and things that you're explaining are, I know, having seen this, it's very helpful in terms of just kind of clarifying straightforwardly. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So this outlines the areas where OEKO TEX do certify, and you can see right from the start off, we control the inputs, and this is whether it's organic cotton going into the supply chain, or alternatively dyes, chemicals and auxiliaries, which can be certified with the Ecopassport, creating reassurance that the inputs going into the supply chain meet all the requirements of the restricted substances list used by brands and retailers. We have a manufacturer's restricted substances list, MRSL, for the dyes, chemicals and print paste, etc. We also have, for the process control, we have sustainable textile production, which looks at the printers, it looks at the dyers, it looks at the finishers, it looks at the garment makers, and you can have a certification specifically for that sustainable textile production. It looks at environmental management, quality management, chemical management, health and safety, wastewater, and social conditions within the factory. So it's very comprehensive. And on top of that, you can also measure the carbon and water footprint for the factory itself, for each of the processes within the factory, and then split it down all the way through to the carbon and water footprint per kilo of material used. So it's a very powerful tool called the impact calculator. Okay. Moving on to the output control, you can actually see here we have certification for the garment, and as you explained very carefully, Graham, standard 100 shows that every component of the garment is certified, whether it's the zippers, the buttons, the fabric, the inner fabric, the dyes and chemicals used on it, and it says that 100% of the garment has been certified and contains no harmful chemistry. The joy of this is because it links directly back to where the garment was processed. You can now also have a made in green label, and the made in green label gives you complete transparency and traceability all the way to whether standard 100 was obtained and going back to the step processes used in the factory. And we can also look at organic cotton at the output control. We have the mirror image of this. The leather standard has exactly the same background. You can have Ecopassport for leather, you can have sustainable textile production for leather, and you can have made in green and the leather standard, which is the equivalent to the standard 100. Yeah. Along the same lines. And it's also worth saying that standard 100 is 31 years old this year in 2023. And when we started off, there were just 100 chemicals of concern, whereas now we're looking at around about 1,500 chemicals. And supporting all of this, we have Responsible Business, the Buying Guide, and my OEKO TEX.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
Moving on down to how do you apply for these certifications, which is, we actually have a certification process, and we're both with standard 100. There's an application form which you fill in. It's a fairly simple process. You do a declaration of conformity to show that your products conform to your quality standards, and there's consistent quality there. So we also need proof of a quality assurance system. You submit for standard 100 a representative sample material. We will test the material for harmful substances, and there's an individual test plan looking for these harmful substances dependent on the substrate, the type of material and the processes it's gone through. There will be a test report to the company, which goes, and then hopefully it will show that your test samples meet OEKO TEX requirements. and you will be awarded for Standard 100. And this Standard 100 can be for the garment, it can be for the fabric that goes into it, or it can be for the components, allowing garment manufacturers to source buttons, zips, etc., which already have Standard 100, and the certificate is valid for 1 year.
John, perhaps I can ask, in terms of timeline for this, what sort of timescales are likely to get to certification?
For Standard 100, depending on the complexity and the amount of testing required, we would anticipate somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks from receipt of the application form and receipt of the dispatch of the representative sample material to the full certification. It can be quicker than that if you were just putting a sample of white knitted polyester. That could be maybe only a week. And obviously it also depends if all the components of the garment pass along the way. Don't forget we test the full garment, including all the components. So if certain areas were to fail, we would collaborate with the applicant in order to try and see if there's a way where the garment can be certified, maintaining the integrity of the Standard 100 certificate.
Another quick question on the in terms of locations for the test facilities and language capability, having this broad range of institutes around the world, is this all available across most languages? So whether you're in Bangladesh, the Far East, or Europe, I take it that there's a local means of having understanding within the language.
Yes, absolutely, Graham. OEKO TEX, through its institutes, has 60 offices worldwide, and we will cover, I'd like to say every language in the world, but I'm sure we can cover the vast majority of languages and requirements worldwide, with 60 offices across 60 different countries.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
The certification process, Graham, for the chemicals, the Ecopassport, is very similar. There's an application form, declaration of conformity, safety data sheets, obviously, with chemicals, and proof of a quality assurance system. So very similar to Standard 100. And then you send the product samples for testing. Initially, we just do a paper exercise. We look at the RSL, so the restricted substances list of the brands and retailers. We look at the manufacturer's restricted substances list for the dye and chemical manufacturers. And again, we create a test plan. And every single chemical that has the Ecopassport has been checked analytically within our laboratories. And you can see that as it comes in for testing, if there is an issue with the RSL and MRSL check, that would show that intentionally people have added harmful chemistry. We would give feedback to manufacturer. We collaborate with manufacturer and try and suggest alternative chemistries, what we might like to consider. And if it was to fail the Ecopassport analytical testing, again, we would go back and we would turn around and say we found some harmful chemistry. And there's only really 3 possible points of contamination. It could be in the synthesis of the chemical itself. In which case the manufacturer can obviously look at that, maybe the wash off wasn't correct. It could be non-intentionally added by the raw material suppliers, in which case we can go back to the raw material suppliers and maybe ask for an alternative stock. And the final one is it could be contaminated in transport. So if you have a tanker which had PFAs in 3 weeks ago, it should have been cleaned out before you put in your print paste. And if it wasn't cleaned out 100%, then your print paste could be contaminated by the leftover as it's used in the tanker. So that's knowledge. But again, we would collaborate closely with the chemical manufacturers to try and eliminate these issues.
And I suppose the advantage is once you know that one of the chemicals that you might buy as a printer, so likely being ink as one of those materials, if it carries the Ecopassport, then you know that you're at the right start point to use it, so that when you get through to the final product testing, you can have the reassurance that that product is already tested. And then what you really need to be aware of is what potential risk for contamination exists within your print plant and within your own processes? Because I know that some garment manufacturers I've worked with in the past will have separate cells for their most stringent work. So if they're supplying brands like Disney or some of the more the brands whose level of expectation is very high, and particularly in things like baby wear, that having the internal disciplines of what chemistry is used in that working environment matter in the same way, don't they?
No, very, very good point. And I'd like to use this garment to demonstrate the process. Here we have a highly complex coat. You can see there's many different components. You obviously have the outer material, you have the lining, the sewing thread, we have zips, there's buttons on there, and you also have little leather pull-ups on the zips. As I said before, every component of that coat will be sourced, have it already sourced standard 100, or it will be tested on the coat before it gets standard 100 to ensure it's free of harmful chemicals. If the process oils, the lubricants, the finishing agents, and the print paste or dyes going onto that coat already have the Ecopassport, we can be extremely confident that coat, because the MRSL, Manufactured Restricted Substances List for the dyes and chemicals and process oils, etc., gives you it meets that, and it gives you reassurance that it will meet the restricted substances list for all the major brands and retailers worldwide, and ZDHC, zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. We do not need to test them on the coat. So that means the coat can go through standard 100 testing a lot quicker, a lot more efficient, and a lot more cost effective. So if you have a print paste manufacturer, if that print paste manufacturer certifies maybe a range of 16 print paste once, and they go through the process, that's very good, is possibly going to be used on maybe 200 or 300 different styles of clothing. So it's a lot more efficient and cost effective for the industry to test the print paste once at the source than looking for contamination at the final product across a whole range of products, increasing the amount and the number of tests required. Does that help, Graham?
Yeah, it does. I've got a couple of kind of questions spring to mind. One is the sampling side. So if you're a garment decorator and you're buying pre-manufactured blanks that have OEKO TEX, that are OEKO TEX compliant, then that's brilliant, because then you do your printing on top to the finished garment. You can then test for your additional chemistry that's gone into it. But if you work with someone like Magna Colors or one of the other printing ink manufacturers, then you stand a very good chance of getting to the right standard first time, and then it just becomes a QA process to validate the results from your production. But in terms of sampling, if you're producing 100,000 coats, how do you lock down the number of samples required for testing and the frequency of testing? Okay,
there's two questions there, I think. What I'll do is I'll go show you this shows a process where you have actually a blank produced, and you can see on the left hand side of the slide we have all the components certified for this blank garment. We have a fabric, the sewing thread, the zipper, and indeed the labels that goes into the garment. So you now have a garment which can be just cut and sewn, and it would carry the standard 100 label. What you then have to look is if there's a garment washed or complete a printing process on the blank, that process has to be certified before we can go forwards to the brand, the standard 100, because you would not want to introduce harmful chemistry at the garment washed or printed stage. So if you buy blanks, the final process, even the labeling, has to be certified as well, creating reassurance for the brands and the retailers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. And was it the frequency?
The frequency of testing, obviously, with standard 100, you actually is tested obviously the garments at the start of the certification process. The validity is 1 year, and at the end of 1 year, the garment will be tested again. But throughout the year, we take random samples going into brands and retailers and selecting random samples from our customers who have already been certified to ensure that throughout the year the standards are maintained. And at the initial application stage, we would look for evidence of the quality assurance and the compliance being in place to ensure you have consistent production, which goes through a quality system to ensure that your output is as consistent as it was when it was certified. And on top of that, if there are any changes, and we understand it's a commercial world and supply chains are definitely stretched at the moment due to the economy in general and unforeseen events. If you do have to substitute a component, then obviously we can certify that at the time to ensure that the compliance level is maintained.
Okay, that's great. That's really clear. Thank you. So we've looked at what happens if we have. So if we fail the certification process, then we will have our attention drawn to the specific chemistry that is causing the failure, and that gives us a chance to respond. What else would you like to share with us about your because I think you have your online platform for finding approved processors and chemistries. Perhaps you could give us a bit of insight into that, John.
Yes, what I would say is that all our testing is done for substances that may be harmful to health, but we should expect, and then with legal and banned substances and biologically active and flame retardant substances, which can be given, can be certified separately, so they can be accepted for standard 100 and OEKO TEX. So it's looking at harmful to health, legally banned and controlled substances, and active chemical certification. What I would say is that the Ecopassport certification is recognised by 37 brands and retailers, ZDHC signatories. You can see some of them here on this slide and this slide. And as I said before, ZDHC was set up shortly after Greenpeace started their detox campaign in 2011. There was 6 brands initially, and it's now expanded to 37. And all 37 accept the Ecopassport when it's actually applied for level 3, which includes chemical hazard assessment and on-site assessment, as meeting their requirements, along with other certification systems. Of course, the joy of the Ecopassport and standard 100 is that if you are making a garment, you can actually source from the OEKO TEX buying guide. You can source for components, for fabric, for buttons, for zips, and the dyes and chemicals to ensure that they meet your requirements by being pre-certified, making a final certification a lot simpler, a lot more cost efficient, and a quicker certification. So the OEKO TEX buying guide is you do not need a password to enter it. You don't need to log in with an email address. It's a public resource, and what it allows you to do is to search for all of the certifications we have, from standard 100, standard, Ecopassport in this case, made in green or detox to zero, and you type in the certificate you are looking for. You can then, this is with the OEKO TEX Ecopassport, you can go down a list and we have every single component that could be used in the dye bath. You can search for the technical area you're looking for. Maybe in this case it's 1.3.25 discharging agents and discharging assistants. You could select that. Or you could go for print paste and inks with and without colourants. So in this case, I'm going for print paste and inks with and without colourants at the bottom of the screen there.
Yeah.
And then you can look at ZDHC level 3, 2, or 1. And if you wish, you could actually go to a location and you could specify a country. You could specify, let's source from Italy, Germany, or Europe, or alternatively Asia or East Asia, Americas, of course. And then you press start search, and you can see there's A to Z of all the countries really, where the company names which have certification. In this case, I will go to F, And we can see on F there, you can see that final text is the Ecopassport, and Fujifilm imaging colors for the bottom United States and the UK of the Ecopassport, along with other companies in India and China. You can then still drill one level deeper with this, and we've gone to Fujifilm imaging colors in the United States. You've actually got the address there, so you can look at the address. You have a phone number, and you normally have a contact email as well. So you could actually email Eric there at Fujifilm in the States if you wanted products with Ecopassport. You can see he has the Ecopassport at the bottom there. And you drill one level deeper, and you can see the actual products which contain the Ecopassport and to which ZDHC level they are certified. So all of these products are certified to ZDHC level 1. And you could phone Eric up and say, excuse me, I'm really interested in the Black Pro Jet TX424, and can we talk about how we would supply it, or minimum order quantities, etc. So it's a buying guide where you're looking at a final garment. You can ensure that all the dyes, chemicals, print paste are pre-certified, together with all the components in there, including the zips and the buttons, to make sure the final garment can be certified quickly and efficiently.
So this is publicly available, isn't it? This is not member restricted. So if I'm looking to buy a new wide format print engine for my textile applications, I can actually look up the manufacturer and see whether the inks are already certified. So it could be also quite useful in the kind of scoping out of new kit before you buy it, because if the Fuji that Fuji ink will be used in their machinery, then you have the opportunity to discover that independently or through asking them. I mean, you would be asking those questions anyway, but it's just kind of nice to know there's the backup.
No, exactly. And many machinery manufacturers who do sell inks as well, they quite often have their inks pre-certified in order that you can move forward with reassurance. I think what's important to remember, Graham, is that when it comes to dyes, chemicals and auxiliaries used in the textile industry, when we look at the raw materials going into those dyes and chemicals and print paste, the raw materials are rarely, if ever, pharmaceutical grade or food grade. They are more commodity grade because of the price pressures in industry, which is why we are so concerned about harmful chemistry entering the supply chain. And buying is the old adage: very good inputs produce very good outputs. If you have the inputs certified and checked for harmful chemistry, it just helps the supply chain to flow very, very easily, and you can have a high degree of certainty that the outputs will also be free of harmful chemistries. And this creates a tremendous amount of reassurance for brands and retailers, and especially they can realize that their products will stand up to global standards.
Yeah.
Brands and retailers also have an issue as their supply chains expand, often through different contracts and contracting mills and models. The technical resources within the industry are also under more pressure, and independent certification can be produced for verification and reassurance that the industry is looking for.
And I suppose the fact that this is your core focal point means that as legislation changes, scientific knowledge evolves, and chemistry that is discovered to have higher levels of toxicology through new research, this comes to your attention immediately because you're scanning for it. So it's a kind of another payoff of working with a specialist certification body, is that you don't have to continually track what new RSLs are being added to the list, because that's something that you would have a focus on. Because I know that stuff from my own research in the past. Sometimes it's really difficult to keep kind of aware of how many parts per million of permissible chemicals there are in workflow. It's something that most printers don't want to spend their time doing, because they'd be lost in the rabbit hole. So there's another reason for us to be grateful for you.
Yeah, we are recognised as the gold standard, and what we ensure through our working groups is that we anticipate up and coming legislation, and we try and ensure, we do ensure that the certifications, if there's any changes such as ZDHC, MOSL, or REACH regulations, that when you have the Ecopassport, you automatically meet requirements of the NGOs and legislation before it's implemented. So we will either be equivalent to the main MOSLs and RSLs, or slightly more stringent because we're meeting legislation elsewhere. And it's a good point that we can actually see what's on our candidate list, because every year we publish, again, you don't need a special login on the OEKO TEX website. We publish for 2023 what are the new updated restrictions, what are the new substances which have now been banned, and more than that, we publish what is our candidate list, so you can see what products we are looking for, with a view to either imposing restrictions in 2024, possibly classifying them as harmful chemistry, or alternatively say, no, we've investigated and this particular substance is not a risk to the public or to health or to the environment, and it's been on the candidate list for 1 or 2 years, and we've now taken it off, having investigated it fully.
Okay, brilliant. Is there anything else that you wish to add, or do you feel that we've covered enough for today's session, John?
No, I think it's been great. What I would like to add is that obviously nobody does it all by themselves, and by moving forward, we can create the reassurance that the industry requires, and then obviously safeguarding public health by true collaboration. And what we're trying to do is collaborate very closely with brands and retailers, the dyers, the finishers, and the printers, and the chemical companies, to ensure that everybody's aligned. Communication is very clear. We try and make it as easy as possible, and it's only through collaboration across the trade, the producers, the input chemicals, brands and retailers, and the NGOs and institutes such as ZDHC, where we can really make it happen and make a difference. And it's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be part of this process.
Brilliant. Yeah, I can support that 100%. Well, look, thank you very much for joining this session today. John and the team at OEKO TEX are available should you have further inquiries or want to get into the detail. I just would like to say, please come and join us at the Sustainability Spotlight stand during FESPA Global Print Expo, which is 23rd to 26th of May at Messe München in Germany. We're going to have more information about sustainability, topics that matter, and materials on display that demonstrate innovation in the space. So come and have a look, and yeah, give us your feedback, and let's move forward towards our reduce, reuse, recycle campaign to all do better. So from me and from John, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Graham, and I look forward to meeting anybody who's ever in Munich in May. Thank you very much.